Well, welcome to Good to Know Shreveport Bossier, a podcast showcasing all the good things happening in our community. I'm Nate Fluharty. This is my co-host Paul Reeser, local businessman and a member of the Committee of 100. And each podcast, we're going to focus on some of the topics and initiatives that are having a positive impact right here in our community. With new episodes available every other Wednesday, you can find Good to Know wherever you typically listen to podcasts. Well, Paul, thanks for joining us as always, pal. We appreciate it.
Man, thank you for joining us because when you're here, Bimeford's not here. Jeffrey Bimeford, he's doing important. He's like at the Capitol today talking to senators and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
He's in our nation's capital grinding away too. But so I get the great honor of filling in for Jeff today and love to talk about some good things to know.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming out. Well, good thing to know we got another amazing guest today. I'm super excited really because we have a local remarkable entrepreneur. This young man has brought businesses to town. He's bought old businesses and just most recently partnered in the new Rhino Coffee down in Providence subdivision. So Grant Nuckolls, local entrepreneur. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm a big fan of the show, and it's cool to be sitting here with y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I said, remarkable young man, just because you're in so many things. So again, what are the businesses you own? You purchased Cuban Liquor, which is awesome what you've done with that.
That's right. So my partner and I purchased that in 2020, and a year before that we purchased Jacquelyn's Cafe. And my partner who started Rhino Coffee about 10, 11 years ago, he and I he started Rhino Coffee out in Providence where I live, and we partnered up and put a Southern Maid inside of there with one of the local Southern Maid franchisees. So Shreveport's home, been here a long time, family's been here forever, and so we talk about growing the pie here, and so that takes, as you well know, multiple businesses, and so that's what we found ourselves in.
Yeah.
So, and you also brought Twisted Root to
That's
town.
right.
That was your first venture, the big, cool-looking place in Shreveport.
Yeah, built that building 10 years ago, and unfortunately just closed it down for new opportunities, but we can get into that as well. Had a good run there, and that was kind of my foray into the restaurant business.
And I tell you what, when I moved to Shreveport actually 7 years ago, and Twisted Root, one of the first businesses that I love to check out.
Absolutely.
And it was so unique to me, a different way that these burgers were cooked, the different variations and things like that. And it kind of seems like some of these other businesses that you have, it's not the same old kind of things.
Right, and I think that's looking back there, and certainly the businesses that we've purchased, having that longevity in a town like Shreveport or any town, middle-sized market, that can be open 40 years as a restaurant, 90 years as a liquor retailer.
Wow.
They're doing something right that's made them unique, and so our basic goal is to take that and kind of nurture that brand for the next 40 or 90 years, not mess it up, maybe make some tweaks, but just I kind of look at it like we're the kind of custodian of the brand, for the next generation.
Wow.
It is amazing. I was a franchise guy on the Sonics.
Right.
But people ask me a lot, should they get into a franchise or should they start their own business? And I usually recommend try to find a business to buy.
Yeah.
But you've done all three of those. So I want to talk about the three different business models today, what it's like doing business in Shreveport, why you stayed around. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about.
Absolutely.
But first of all, you're raised in Shreveport. You're from here, right?
Family's been here since 1863, I think.
Wow.
Mom's side in Shreveport. Dad's family got to Bossier Parish around the same time. So many people my age that are here or back here. I mean, families is at the top of the list, and certainly for me too. Have kids that are now 7th generation Shreveporters, and of course your heartstrings pull you here, and I want to keep them here. Part of that's making sure that it's a fun place to grow up, and there's lots of cool businesses for them to go to as they grow older. So that's kind of the general idea. I went to Tulane, came back here. Worked for Hardware Resources, which my mentor and was the founder of that company. I found myself traveling in the hardware business, went to China like 12 times in 4.5 years, and they got bought out by private equity, and I started to get that scratch, that itch to hang my own shingle somewhere. My dad has been in the car wash business in Bossier for 40 years. I grew up in a small family business, and so I think that was just, I guess, in the blood. So
Yeah, I like that. What about the importance too of maintaining that to kind of help the communities here? I mean, you mentioned your family's been here for a long, long time, so to maintaining that local aspect of things.
Yeah, so a town the size of Shreveport, small business, family business, locally owned businesses is up and down every street in our city, right? And many of those business owners are multi-generational. I mean, even my wife, her mom and grandmother started a ladies' boutique in 1976 in Shreveport, the Village Washstand, that's in Piermont Common, now third generation company. So it's the American story, it's a Shreveport story. And for those of us that grow up in that business, and luckily she did too, so we understand each other's struggles, come home after a long day of work and and you're still working, or you're talking about each other's day, but I think we both understand the value of that, not just for our families, but for the greater the city.
Yeah,
Keep it unique. That's that cultural
You can
fabric.
relate, I'm sure, a lot to that, Paul.
Something about that. It seems like.
I mean, I told him on the phone,
yeah.
you asking me about restaurants. This dude, he's one of my mentors. I mean, one of the best parts about getting in the Committee 100 is getting to meet him. I mean, and we can talk about franchises. One of my biggest frustrations, Paul, is that a lot of people equate franchise with not locally owned or franchise with not being involved in the community. And one thing that I always try to stress to my friends and try to lead by example and follow your footsteps. I mean, this guy was super and still is super involved in the community. I mean, Roy Griggs, you think McDonald's, you automatically think corporate.
Yeah.
Roy Griggs, a local McDonald's franchisee, one of my mentors and friends, perhaps the most community involved restaurateur in Shreveport. So that's something I try to drive home and remind people of. Locally owned is important, but there's many ways to be locally owned.
Sure.
That's right. I mean, we send our royalty checks to wherever the franchise home is, but we own that building. Well, in my case, I was able to own the building.
Yep.
We own the business. We hire the people locally. The company does not come in on a horse to save you. If you have problems, it's your business.
That's right.
And you see a lot of local franchises that get very involved in schools and different organizations. I know you do, especially. I'm very familiar with what you do with Cuban Liquor.
Yeah.
To be involved with different areas. Talk about different ways to get involved with local community and support your local community when you own a business.
Yeah, I mean, like at Twisted Root, and many restaurants do the give back nights, but I wanted to make sure that was an integral part of our business. I actually partnered with a local marketing upstart, and one of my tasks was find me schools, churches, nonprofits. I want to do at least one fundraiser a week. Most of the restaurants are giving back 10%. We gave back 20%. And just make that a part of the business. I looked at it as a win-win. Of course, I want to give back, but also it brings customers and oftentimes new customers in, and that's a great thing. And so even at Cuban, you would think, I mean, and it's a nicer liquor store, but it's still a liquor store. Well, how can you give back to local nonprofits? Well, I found some other stores in other markets that take these what we call allocated bourbons, right? Pappy Van Winkle's the most famous one, but all these bottles that are hard to get. And you can mark them up to a real high price, but I didn't want to do that. I said instead,
let's
just
talk about what a joy it is.
Tickets.
Are you familiar with bourbons, like the expensive, fancy stuff? That
so I got to choose my words. Yes,
I've heard about these things
on special occasions. Yeah.
So a Pappy Van Winkle is going to be, you can find it on the internet for hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah,
of
many
dollars.
thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So it comes to me with a suggested retail price of like the 10-year, $79. You go online and you're going to pay 10 times that easily.
Yeah, sure.
So in some liquor stores, we'll put it behind a glass cabinet and they'll sell it themselves for $700 instead of $70. Well, we, in following others, said we're going to sell it for the fair price because we feel like in the long run that's good. Our customers appreciate that. But we raffle off tickets with all the proceeds of the raffle for many bottles like this. And we decided on our first year, we picked 100 bottles throughout the year and sold each of them at the normal price. But we raffled off the chance to win the right to buy one of those bottles from us. And so the first year we raised $20,000. Last year over $25,000. That proceeds, which is way more than what we even sell the bottles for, we pick a local nonprofit. My partner and I really believe that that helping the children in the inner city have access to books and reading is critical to turning around a lot of Shreveport's problems. And so we partnered with the Dolly Parton Library United Way 1 year, Common Ground in the Cedar Grove community 1 year. And so it's a really fun way to get involved, give back, and while conducting normal course of business. So I think that there's any way that any business can get involved. There's fun, creative ways to do it.
And more about just the creative part, and talk about that, because if you own a business, people are constantly asking you for things, which
Every
is
day.
great. It's a great
Especially
opportunity.
the restaurant business.
But
right.
it's every day, because restaurant food's just free. Just give it away.
That's it.
So a bottle of Blanton's, let's say.
Right.
That's a nice bourbon. And it's hard to get.
Yeah.
Man, it's hard. So how many bottles of Blanton's a month will they send your liquor store?
Not many. I mean, some months you'll get a handful, many months you'll get zero.
Yeah, so
But
you
I
get
always try-
two or three bottles of Blanton's. So
Right.
I remember we had lunch one day, and I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, Grant, can you hook me up for a friend
Right.
Yeah.
with some Blanton's? And you're like, dude, everyone asked me for that.
That's right.
So it's a great way to politely say,
Sure.
I can't give everybody a bottle of Blanton's, but I do raffle it off. If you want, it's like $65 to buy the bottle, retail.
Right.
It's not $65.
But we'll always
what a
hold
genius
some
way,
for
yeah.
like we were at Cyport's. Cyport had their annual fundraiser at Cyport at night the other weekend. They do silent auctions, so I always try to hold back some bottles. If we get asked for a nonprofit that we're involved with or that means something to us or that's doing something like that, we made a gift basket, had a bottle of Blanton's in it with some old-fashioned stuff, gave it to them to where they can, instead of me selling it for $200 or $300 instead of $60, I'll give it to them. They can put it in a basket, silent auction. They can make $200 or $300 on the basket, and so it's fun.
It's a great way to be creative and
Yeah.
give back. And every Friday, and I'm just selling Cuban Liquor
Hey,
today.
come on,
I
let's
love
do
your
it.
other restaurants
Thank
too,
you.
but
Free pub.
because your creativity in the way you do this local marketing. So you send out the Facebook page. You say, okay, the first.
That's
whoever,
right. We'll pick a random Friday once every 4 or 6 weeks, and a lot of these similar type of bottles, we'll just put them all on the shelf. I don't tell my wife, not even my staff, not even my business partner knows when I'm going to do it, because I want them to be able to look a customer in the eye and truthfully say, dude, I promise you, I don't know the next time we're doing this.
Right.
But you'll know when I know, and that's when the picture goes on Facebook, And
the
so,
Cuban Liquor Facebook. We'll go
that's
ahead and
right.
give you a plug. The
Yeah.
Cuban,
Yeah, absolutely.
Liquor Facebook.
Should they
Like
just
that.
go there, like it, friends
Yeah,
with
like it,
or-
and that way you'll
okay.
get notified. And on these random Fridays, I'll try to put up 60 or 75 bottles, and any one customer they buy one bottle, not one of each, just one. That gives 60 or 75 different customers in Shreveport the opportunity to come in and fairly, purchase one of these bottles.
Now, I'm interested, for those that don't know, that may be checking things out right now, I guess some may be asking the question, what is making this so rare? Is it a supply chain issue that we've heard so many times before? Is it just so many people are looking for Blanton's?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, and these brands kind of come and go. My suppliers tell me like 10 or 15 years ago, Pappy Van Winkle was on the closeout list, and the suppliers reps were buying it for $10 and $15 a bottle. Just get it out of the warehouse. This stuff's not selling.
Wow.
And then there's all kind of great documentaries about it, but the brands catch fire. And then now these bourbons in many cases take 6 years, sometimes 10, 15, 20 years to make, to sit there in that warehouse. So today the supplier realizes they've got a gold mine on their hands, but it takes them 8 or 10 or 15 more years to make more. And so when you're in that time waiting, you're only getting that little bit that you're getting, and so it's just the simple supply demand.
Wow, interesting. Thanks for breaking that down.
Well, I mean, I love business, so we got to be careful. But and people are interested in
something to
business.
taste.
You're about to taste what?
Right, yeah.
So if people are interested in getting into business, like I said, what is the business climate in Shreveport? How do young people? It's mostly older folks like me and even older,
Right,
some, in business around. But how do people, if they want to start getting into business, where should they start to get involved? And what all things are you involved in?
Good question.
Yes, I mean I'm a big believer in giving back with nonprofit service. It's not the only way to give back, but it's a way I've really enjoyed giving back. Meeting people like you has helped me, and it's certainly. I'm on the board of the Shreveport Chamber Committee 100, the State Committee 100, the Independence Bowl Foundation, the Boy Scouts of America. I was an Eagle Scout at a young age and had fun giving back as I grew older that way. So, and it's not, like I said, it's not the only way to give back. Many people serve on their church boards. Many people start their own nonprofit or just go volunteer on a weekend. But it's really, really important because we can't just sit down and complain. Every city has problems. Shreveport has its share, but I promise you all cities have their share. And I think what makes one city better than the other is the degree to which their citizens just get involved and give back. So I've enjoyed the nonprofit service, and maybe that's a reason why we've put in the time to get creative on how our businesses can kind of get involved in a fun way and give back too. But I do think it's important. If I want my kids and their kids' kids to stay here like I've stayed, then I think they need me to get involved and to try to make the city better.
That's awesome. And I think you guys could both kind of shed some light on this, but as far as the overall business climate right now, I'm sure there are worse places to be in America right now than Shreveport, Bossier. I mean, we see new businesses coming in. You got some lined up?
I think Shreveport is so, to be our size, we have so many things going for us. It's a blessing and a curse. What I mean is we're the smallest city in America with a symphony, a ballet, an opera, a world-class science museum, a world-class art museum, but that's great. At the Strand Theater, we could keep going, but to take care of all those things with a limited population base, you've got to either get that population base more successful with disposable income, or you've got to grow that population base. And so that's what we all need to be focused on doing, because there's a lot of cities bigger than us that don't have any of that.
Yeah.
And then don't even get me started on our legit music history. We've got more legit music history here than Nashville or Austin.
Wow.
So we just need to cultivate that. And then with our natural resources, no city can build a river or an interstate, or have two of the largest rail lines in America intersecting, or have a manufacturing port, or have a world-class multimodal airport facility. So we've got all this, and all these job announcements you've seen the last year or two that people like the BRF, the Chamber, the Committee 100, NLEP, Justin Dixon, these organizations that are working together, you're hearing these 300, 600,000 person job announcements. It's because of all this. And so a lot of us that are my age and older that have been hearing about all the good things we have, and you're like, well, okay, well, let's take advantage. Well, it takes time, but it's happening. The General Motors facility that we all know about that had so many thousands of jobs in the 80s when I was a kid and started to close, there are more jobs there and committed there now than there were when that facility closed. That's huge. Right. And so it makes me excited because I sit on the bottom of the food, my wife's business that sells clothes and sheets and all kind of cool gifts, the liquor store, the restaurant, my dad's car wash. These are service, restaurant, retail service businesses. We need population to survive and thrive. And so I'm so fired up. I want to do whatever I can to support these big job opportunities, because that's going to be more customers and employees for our smaller companies.
Yeah, I like that. We're going to have to add tourism to his list.
Man, I'm telling you, you're getting me fired up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you talk about this, when you join these types of committees, you get involved. You may do it. People might join now because they say, I want to meet Grant. And that's a great way to do it. You get to join, and you get to be around folks like you, old folks like me.
And I don't get to often, being from here, and you meet a lot of people, so I know some of these large business owners, but I certainly don't. I'm not on that level as far as a big manufacturer or something. So I really enjoy meeting somebody, like a Graham Walker that owns Fiberbond, or Trey Smith with Ivan Smith. These huge companies, multi 100,000 person employers. They're operating on a different scale, but we can learn from each other. And we can try to support each other and sometimes find solutions to each other's problems just because we come from a different standpoint.
Yeah.
But there are people really discount. There are some big, incredible companies here in Shreveport. But there's some small, incredible ones too. And it's fun getting to know those people.
Well, and that's, you can be on different events and you learn, you make connections with people. It opens up opportunities. I speak for free to a lot of organizations, and then people call me later and ask me to speak and actually pay me money. Can you believe that, Nate?
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it for that.
Right.
But I do it just to try to help out. So, and join these different organizations as an opportunity to help the community, but it always comes back to you.
That's right. I mean, another great part about being a city the size of Shreveport, it's big enough that there's a cultural demand of especially young people that want to get into new fun things, but it's small enough to where if you see something that you want to create, the city's not so big that you can't just go do it. So
Right.
some friends of mine a few years ago saw a real need for more events and festivals in Shreveport, music festivals, art festivals. And so we just started just doing them. And we're successful with that. And so that's another real big benefit. It's the big fish, small pond deal. I mean, it's a lot harder, more timely and expensive to go create a music festival in Dallas versus to go create one in Shreveport.
And is it that simple? Is it just?
It's not
let's,
simple,
Let's
but-
just. Well, I mean, you make it sound simple.
It's more
That's a good
simple
question,
than if
Nate.
you were in a
Just to
big
say,
city.
just to do it.
Yeah,
Just
it's
do
more
it.
simple that, like,
Yeah.
you know, we had the first public event at Norton Art Gallery, partnered with them. Derby Day was incredible. There had never, in the almost 200-year history of Shreveport, never been a free big festival in Betty, Virginia Park, Crawfest, 10,000 people,
Yeah.
free, incredible music. You know, if you're willing to put out the hard work, it's no different than starting a business.
Sure.
It's a huge risk. It's a lot of time, but you can be rewarded. And if you see a need and do the work, I'm just saying it's easier than seeing and doing that work in a bigger market. So I think people that can take that to their advantage. You know,
So you could go to Derby Day and you can say, man, I really like this. Who puts this on? Grant, I want to volunteer next year. And then you take them and you show them how to do everything. And then you say, oh, from what I've learned and these connections, now I can go on and do my own free thing, you know.
And that's whether you get them, like I've found mentors in the restaurant business, you can find mentors in any business. I mean, I think most people will tell you Shreveport is a very giving town as far as whether it's the business, civic leaders, the events, whoever they are, cultural. If you're willing to sit down and ask, I'm telling you, they're going to be more than willing to tell you and to kind of mentor you. And again, that's harder to get plugged into in a bigger town like
Yeah.
that.
Well, guys, as we begin to wrap things up here.
Wrap it up. We're
Oh,
not
we
even
got
getting
started.
started
Well,
yet.
I got a very important question / observation. I was mentioning too. I'm filling in for Jeff Bine for normally his deal, but this has been so enlightening for me to hear because for both of you guys that are staples of the community, you've both had so much success in the business world. I'm sensing a lot of optimism from both of you guys. So I'd like to kind of ask you about that, is the fact that, you know, oftentimes in the news and the business climate, there's, you know, inflation impacting Americans. There's so much happening economically in this world that can be viewed as a negative. But when we break it down on kind of a local scale, both of you guys, again, you both seem optimistic. I want to ask you about, you know, what you see about the future, the good things, the good to know stuff, and what it takes to get there. And we'll start.
Yeah, and I
start
am
with you, Grant.
optimistic, and I've lived through, you know, even recently, some of the tough climate with inflation and everything. But that's transitory. That's temporary. It's a cycle. It's an American cycle. You're going to be affected by that anywhere. I think the things that we talked about that can't be easily replicated, like the fabric of a community, its people, and all these resources and things we have going for us. That's what makes me optimistic, but also not just the Pollyanna stuff. I mean, these job announcements that we're seeing, like, I mean, Amazon obviously, but they've doubled down. I mean, they've already committed to a second location. The first one's not even open yet.
Yeah.
And so we, as America is growing south, and as companies are looking for ways to get in and like distribution and manufacturing, they're having to look at towns like Shreveport that check all the boxes and that are a more cost-effective way of doing business. So I really believe our best days are ahead of us. I really, really do. And so that's what makes me excited to keep trying to plug away here and to hope that, you know, my kids after school will come back, you know, just like I did.
And we certainly hope that you do. What about you, Paul? Are you going to keep giving good advice to,
Just what he
guys
said.
like this?
Yeah, I'm mentoring into my old age. No, but I will say it's all about people to me, you know, and I was in the retail business and, you know, with sales and fast food. And but, you know, you look at someone like Grant here who's had amazing successes, but also some failures, you know. So people say, well, what happened to Twisted Root? How can you be so optimistic? Well, most restaurants close in the first year. 50% close within, you know, 80% close within the first 10 years. But you were open for 10 years.
Yep.
It was a great run, I would say. But tell people kind of what happened. What happened?
Yeah,
with the Twisted
absolutely.
Root?
So when we opened, our ticket average was about $14 a person, including alcohol, milkshakes, everything. When I closed, it was over 20, simply because having to raise prices to meet all this crazy year and a half or so of inflation we've seen. In a bigger town, now one advantage of a bigger town is that you may have more families that could still afford that big drastic change in price. But even still, in other cities, you're seeing many restaurants close. They're always closing. I mean, that's just the nature of the business, is to his point. But specifically with my overhead there, a big, nice building, huge facility, 5,000 square feet. In 2013, the cost of running that restaurant was much, much lower. So the ability for me to sell the same hamburger at a lower price, it was easier to do. So now it needs to go to somebody with a higher end, food item that can justify, instead of a $20 hamburger, sell a $40 or $50 nice plate of food that many restaurants in Shreveport are successful doing right now. And I think it's a great facility in a great part of town. I think it'll be great. But as far as selling hamburgers in a big facility, it's just different. The economy's changed. That's definitely not a knock on Shreveport. Right. It's just a knock on today's climate anywhere.
It's a beautiful building. It could be anything. If anyone wants to buy his building, man, go check it. It could be a law firm.
I mean, we were talking the other day.
The
two biggest, two most similar businesses that I could think of that were for sale a month or two ago. On big Zaxby's on Uri Drive and the old Applebee's on Burt Coons have both been bought and turning into car washes, which is funny because that's the business I grew up in, and it's just crazy. That business has changed too. But
they call your dad. Know. Maybe he wants to fancy car. But all that to say is it's not the end of the world.
That's right.
You have to put that into your
you put that into your model, and you have to know when to pivot, and you have to know when to make a hard pivot. I mean, that's unfortunately. That I keep a little running list just for my own knowledge. Over 75 restaurants have closed in Shreveport since COVID.
Wow.
I mean, you don't really realize it until you really take stock of that. But many of them reopen as something else, and some of them reopen, to your point, and as something completely different. So you have to really look at the business you're going into and know the risk that you're taking. But for every one that closes and reopens, thankfully you've got the staples of your community, like Jacquelyn's that I have that's been around 40 years. In many of the awesome new restaurants that have opened here in the last 5 or 10 years, we have world-class restaurants and world-class operators and chefs here. And that's equally as important of the fabric of the community. So I just encourage people, support all the locally owned ones that you can, and get out there and try to find something new. We've got a lot of cool things in this town. Certainly restaurants, but art and culture and music, and the list goes on.
Very well said.
How much time do we have, Nate?
We're actually just about out of time, but I think that was a great closing segment.
Jacquelyn's and what you did to get the business up, and there's so many cool things. But I think we're right to be optimistic. But people think optimistic means that you're expecting 100% success. And when I grew up, there was always a saying, a big, Hall of Fame baseball guy only hits it 3 out of 10 times.
That's right.
That's the best of the best. So I'm luckily I probably hit 8 out of 10. But there's some failures, there's some bad ones. But you got to expect those, and you got to prepare for them, and you got to be ready to pivot, like you said. So. But anyway, man, thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, both of you guys. I appreciate you letting me be here today, and it's very enlightening for me to to hear from both of you about where the area goes from here. So this is really cool, and you gave us a lot of good stuff to know.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you, pal, and thank you, Paul, as always.
Absolutely. Close us out with your official. You're the actual paid guy that knows how to be on TV and all that stuff.
Oh,
so you're the talent.
No pressure. Well, the big
Make
thanks.
It great.
On behalf of all of us here at KTBS, we certainly like to thank the fellows for being here today, and for you to tuning in to our Good to Know podcast. Stay tuned for much more here in the future. Very proud to do this, and very proud of our community.